Bigger, please. Even bigger. So Ryan started going blind when he was 18. And one night he flies to Chicago for this work thing that he's doing, and he gets to his hotel room, and he wants to call his wife back home in Canada, right? Say he got her there safely. And so he needs to do something very simple. He just needs to find the phone.
And so I walk into the room, and I find the bed. And then to the left of the bed, I feel along, and I find this nightstand, which is where I expect the phone to be. Mm-hmm. And so I feel up the nightstand, and there's no phone. Fine, so I reach across the bed to the other side and find the other nightstand. And I feel that one up, and there's no phone.
That's unusual, right?
It's a bit odd, right?
So Ryan can shuffle cautiously around till his knees graze into things when he goes to a new place, and that is how he finds a sofa, which orients him.
And so I turn to where I think there might be a table, and poof, there's a coffee table. So I grope this coffee table for a while, and there's no phone on it.
Grope is kind of a funny word to use for this.
It sort of feels that way, though. You know, you're just sort of, because you don't know where anything begins or ends, so you really maul it.
Ryan says that as he moves around a new place, he doesn't exactly draw a map in his head like you're seeing right here. He says it's more like wandering around in a first-person video game where the only objects that become visible are ones that he actually touches. And so he figures, okay, well, let's just see what is on the other side of this coffee table. And so he edges forward in the room.
And I find there's a desk. And I'm like, aha, the desk, right? So I feel around on the desk, and there's a lamp, and there's the notepad I'll never use, and there's, stuff, but there's no phone. So I'm left to my last sort of blind guy resort, which is I go back to the beginning, back to the bed, and I find the wall, and I start Marcelling the walls. I'm wiping them up and down, and I round the fourth corner, and I get to the bathroom, and I go past the bathroom, and there's nothing, and I feel behind me again, and the bed is back behind me again. So I've circled this room. Mm-hmm. And I even thought, well, maybe it's like a super fancy hotel, and maybe there's a phone in the bathroom. And I go in there, and there's nothing. So I circle the room 2 more times this way, wiping it down, and I check the coffee table again, I check the desk again, and I just figure, forget it. I'll just go to bed and try again tomorrow.
So he goes to bed, doesn't call his wife, goes to sleep. And in the morning, he wakes up to the sound of something kind of curious to him. It's the sound of a phone ringing. And groggy, he follows that sound. And then he finds that somehow there is now a phone in this room.
And the phone is on a coffee table. Now, I know I felt that thing up to an illicit degree. Like, I mauled that coffee table, and there was nothing on that table last night. And so I answer the phone, and it's my wife. And she says, why didn't you call me last night? And I said, well, there was no phone. But there is now.
She, of course, doesn't believe that there was no phone, but this is kind of par for the course when you're married to a blind guy.
And so we talk, and then I hang up the phone, and I go to get back into bed, and there's now a wall there.
A wall. Where the bed should be is now a wall. He feels through the sofa. The sofa is right where it should be. The wall behind the sofa is in place. He feels along the sofa again. He inches towards where the bed should be, and yes, it still seems to be a wall.
And I'm totally disoriented at this point. Like, it's funny, and it's also sort of terrifying, because I know the bed was there, and now there's a wall, and I keep touching the wall, thinking maybe this time it'll go away. And I go to the left, and there's another wall now. And I'm a grown man, and I'm lost in a hotel room.
So what's your next move? What do you do?
I ended up, doing the Marcel thing. I start wiping the walls, feeling my way along the edges, and it wraps back around till I find the bed is actually behind me.
He was in a part of the room, an alcove, that he didn't know existed the night before.
So here's what the room actually looked like. There are 2 coffee tables and 2 sofas on the left and the right side of the bed.
The night before, when Marceau'd his way around the walls, he got around 3 walls, and he got to the 4th wall and didn't actually touch it all the way along to the point where it met another wall. No, instead, he stopped halfway. Basically, he reached behind him, felt the bed behind him, and he just assumed, like, okay, I guess that the wall is coming, and he just assumed that the wall continued for another 8 feet or so, but it did not continue at all. There was this alcove.
And this is the problem. When you're blind, you just can't assume anything. And the problem is you get a picture in your mind, and if you get it wrong, you just live inside the mistake.
He says this kind of thing happens to him a lot. 2 weeks before our interview, he got lost in another hotel room in Los Angeles. He couldn't find the door to get out. He says that during the decade that he slowly went blind,
It took me a long time to come to understand that blindness actually wasn't the main problem. The main problem was embarrassment. I had to sort of give myself over to the slapstick of things.
to state the obvious, sometimes it is just a lot easier to see something. Clears things up. And today on our radio show, we have all kinds of stories of people trying to make what is normally invisible to them visible. I'm talking about unspoken feelings. I'm talking about people's secret lives. I'm talking about the invisible hand of the devil himself. And as somebody who works in a medium where normally I am invisible, today our show is on stage in front of you in New York City, and we are beaming it out live into movie theaters all over the US and Canada. From the Tinseltown Jackson Theater in Pearl, Mississippi, to the Old Mill Stadium in Bend, Oregon, from the Cinemark Salt Lake City in Utah to the Silver City Polo Cinemas in Winnipeg, Canada, and the Palace Centro in Brisbane, Australia. And the idea of today's program is we're going to do a mix of stories like we normally do on the radio, plus things that are so visual you could never, ever do them on the radio in a million years. There's stuff you just have to see. We have dance, we have animation, we have stuff that we just made up that I don't even want to say anything about. I just want you to see it. From WBEZ Chicago, it's This American Life, distributed by Public Radio International. Stay with us. Act one, there's a bear hit in the woods. So the guy that you just heard, Ryan Knighton, has this story that is not about what is invisible to him as a blind person, but it's about being invisible. Please welcome Ryan Knighton.
I couldn't wait to tell my daughter that I'm, a blind guy. And I'm not saying I was excited to tell her. I'm saying I couldn't wait to tell her in a way that she could actually grasp the basic concept of blindness. The trouble is, a 2-year-old can't imagine what it's like to be another person, let alone imagine an entirely different physical reality like blindness. I'd say to her, Papa sees what you see when you close your eyes, but mine are open. Which makes no sense to anybody. So the miscommunications began to pile up between us. One day I'm standing in the hallway of our house, and Tess either kicked or rolled this foam soccer ball to me. Foam soccer balls are really quiet. You see my problem. And it rolled by, yes. And I ignored it, but I didn't know it was there. And she got upset. She wanted to know why didn't I kick it back to her? Why didn't I want to play with her? And she began to cry. Now, I don't know what's going on at all. So I'm just saying things like, what's wrong, Pumpkin? And like, hey, why don't you go get your ball or something? And part of me felt useless as a father. and another part of me just felt really angry at Nerf. Another time I picked up Tess at a daycare, and, Papa, Papa, she screams as I walk in, and she sees me, and I squat down, and I open my arms, and I wait for the hug because, it's best that I wait because the floor is dotted with babies between us, and nothing ruins our sweet moment like me stomping on babies. So her body slams into mine, and she wraps herself in a monkey hug, and I tell her how much I missed her. And of course, to that, she cries. But she cried on the other side of the room. And suddenly, I feel this body, and it's not familiar, and in fact, it's a little boy. And Tess is crying, Papa, Papa, as if the word itself hurts on the other side of the room. And so she just can't understand why I've hugged another child, and I chase after the sound of her, and I'm sorry about the babies. So the miscommunications piled up, and they were mostly just little heartbreaks, but sometimes they were dangerous. There's times when I would walk her to the daycare in the morning, and I work at a university, and we'd walk across campus together in the morning, and she'd be in one of those NASCAR roll cage backpack things, which are great for blind fathers. And we'd make our way across campus, and it's beautiful, it's in the mountains, and it's forested. And I say this just so you can understand my legitimate panic, when from her backpack, she said to me one of her few words. She said, "Bear." And I froze. What's that, Pumpkin? And I turned, because I can still see some smears, so I looked for a big black one. Bear. And I said, there? Like, we're going over there? And she's bear, bear, and she's getting more upset very clearly. Now, this is Canada. We're in the forest, this is the mountains, and the bears love our dumpsters, they dine frequently. The security guards just tell us, which entrances and exits to avoid, and they even just lock down the daycare and let the kids bust out the goldfish crackers and watch the bears from the windows like some demented drive-in movie. And now Tess is watching one from the comfort of my back. And where it is, I have no idea. Now I can feel she's upset, and she's sort of leaning, so I reached behind me and I grabbed her hand, and she was pointing right behind us. So I reeled around to face the bear, and I smelled for it. And I have no idea what bear smell is. Now, I didn't know if I should run or if it would startle the bear to charge us or if I would just run into the bear, and that would be ironic. So I said, let's just go this way, Pumpkin. And I started to run, and she got really upset. So I said, actually, let's go this way. And she got really upset. I thought, well, I'm pinballing around this parking lot like with a baby on my back, like a Geiger counter. And then it occurs to me, and I reach back with both hands, and yeah, she dropped her teddy bear. And yeah, she'd grown a little frustrated. But everything changed when she was 3, and I remember the exact moment. We were sitting in the kitchen, and I asked her to pass me a cookie, and she did, and I reached for it and did my usual dumb crab pinching the air thing, and she said, "Papa doesn't see." And I thought, that's what I've been saying. And we said, yes, Tess, Papa doesn't see. And then she had to check. Mummy sees? And we said, yes, Mummy sees. And she said, Tess sees? And we said, yes, you see. And 1 week later, we were sitting in the living room, and she was watching Sesame Street or something, and she said, Papa, who's that? And I said, Papa doesn't see. And so she grabbed my hand, and she put it on the screen. And she drew it over whatever she was looking at. She's 5 now. We're still not there yet. There's still things she doesn't quite understand. And there's things that she knows her father can't ever do for her. And I think that's something everybody comes to know about their parents, just not usually so young. And even to this day, we'll go to the playground and she'll say, "Papa, I'm over here. I bet you can't catch me." And I say, "That's right." Thank you.
Ryan Knighton is the author of the books Come On Papa and Cockeyed.